Hello darling, and welcome back to my channel. I'm glad that you could join me today. I hope you're all doing well. Well, today I'm in Preston at the moment and I'm driving over to Flemington. So it's going to take me about, maybe a bit over half an hour to drive there. So I thought in the meantime, I would like to make a video explaining about my injuries and what happened, and because I started this channel to help teach girls about domestic violence and how to recover from that and how to avoid getting into those situations, I thought, well, I would use this half an hour or so while I'm driving to explain a little bit about that. So I'm not sure where to start because there's so much, but let's just start from the start because that will make sense. And so I have a broken clavicle, as I said in a previous video. And before I got married, and I was living with my de facto boyfriend, who was my first love, and I was his first love. And you know, being young, naive, and not experiencing life, you know, it's just one of those situations where you have to learn yourself. No one else is going to do it. You have to do it yourself. And what happened is that he had a habit when we were driving. It wasn't really a car accident because it was actually abuse. Let me explain. Because what happened, every time we would drive, I'd be in the driver's seat and I would be in the passenger seat, of course. And he was a bit of a smarty bum, that's the polite way to say it. And every time he went to turn right, and if there was a car, and if there was a car coming onward this way, oh my God, he would always cut off in front of them and just put the foot down and go. And it didn't matter how many times I told him, I said, don't do that because one day we're going to have a car accident and I'm the one who's going to cop it. And he would just laugh and say, oh no, that's not going to happen. Famous last words, aren't they? Oh my God. So anyway, one morning we're driving over to see his mechanic, something about the car, I don't know what, I can't remember, but it was about 11 o'clock in the morning. And we were driving over to see his mechanic, and as he was coming up the street to turn in front of into the mechanic, which was on the right side of the road, and there was no traffic at all. It was a quiet street. I think it was a Saturday morning if I remember right, but anyway, all of a sudden this car came around the corner and he's driving down this way. And all of a sudden my boyfriend goes, oh, what's this? I'm going to beat him, and he's being really, oh, well, that's how he always was. And because he was going slow, he had to put the foot on the clutch because it was a 4-speed manual. He had to put the foot on his clutch, so he wouldn't stop. And he's tried to take off in front of this car that's speeding down the road towards us. Anyway, cut a long story short, apparently what happened is that his foot slipped off the clutch and therefore the car stalled. And because, oh my God, I couldn't believe how quick it happened. And so the next thing I know is, because I'm just going to move up a little bit, but I don't want to park on any clear. And I mean, this guy was driving a Cadillac and we were in a tiny little Toyota sedan, and our car looked like a little sardine tin, and guess who copped me? I did, just like how I had predicted. I couldn't believe it. I was so angry with him. And then he gets out of the car and he starts panicking and he's like, oh, I didn't see him. And I'm looking at him like, you freaking lying bastard. You damn well did see him and you tried to take your money like you always do. Oh my God, you have no idea how peeved off I was. And so anyway, my clavicle is like this, well it was, but by the time this guy hit us, my clavicle was like this. I'm not joking. And I had to wear a figure 8 to try to help keep my clavicle back, and I had to lie on my back for 3.5 months, and oh my God, it was just a nightmare. So that night, after we get out of hospital that night, and I've got my arm in a sling, and he's okay, he just had a couple of bruises and cuts and that was it. And I better not go too close to him. And I'm sitting in the car waiting for my mum, and she wanted to talk to his mum. I don't know, something about the hospital or the accident or whatever. So he comes out and he's putting on his crocodile teeth because he's crying, but there's no teeth coming out. I mean, as if he was expecting me to believe that. So anyway, he's saying, oh look, I can't come to the hospital because I had to go up to the hospital in Ballarat, and that was over an hour drive from where we were. And so I was really angry. That just made me feel angrier, And then the next day, I found out that the reason why he didn't want to come to the hospital with me, because while I was at the hospital, because bear in mind, he put me, you got to think from my perception. And bear in mind that I try not to get emotional when I remember this sort of stuff, but sometimes it's hard not to. And his friends tell me the reason why he didn't want to go to the hospital with me that night was because he was smoking dope with his friends. I couldn't believe it. I mean, you couldn't go a day without having dope. You had to have at least 1 gram every day, I mean, I didn't smoke, and oh my God, that sucks vile. Anyway, so that was how I got the broken shoulder. And we were together for about 4.5 years, all out. And after the accident, I started to change. I mean, he was a decent person, but then he started to change, and because what happened was he wanted to have this hot rod car, but he didn't have the money to pay for it. So he bought this big bag of speed from one of his friends, and he's putting it up on the shelf there and in his bungalow. And he says to me, don't touch this, because if you do, you will die and I will get into trouble. And I'm looking at him stupid, thinking, what would I touch that stuff for? Anyway, he said he wasn't going to touch it, but he was going to sell it so he could use the money that he sold to pay for the hot rod that he wanted. Anyway, we're stuck in a traffic jam. They're doing roadworks. Oh well, that's okay. I've got plenty of time to get to Flemington. There's no hurry. Yeah, so I noticed after a little while the bag of speed was going smaller and smaller and smaller, and whether he actually sold any or not, I'm not sure, but he probably did sell a bit, I assume. So what happened was that as the bag of speed got smaller, the more his personality changed for the worst. He ended up becoming the complete opposite person to what he used to be, which was disappointing. And I didn't like that. And because that's all he was doing was just buying speed and smoking dope and hanging out with his friends because he didn't want to work. Like he said to me when we first got together, he's jumping up and down like a little kid saying, if you ever get pregnant, you must tell me because I am not going to go to work at all to support a family. I hate working, I'm not going to work. So anyway, so that was that. And then I can't believe it, after all these years, it's still difficult for me to talk about at times. Sometimes it's easier for me to talk about it, other times it's not, you know. I suppose it depends on how I feel at the time, you know. So, because the speed makes a person, apparently, because the speed, the drug, makes a person horny all the time. And so before he started taking the speed, he was like, you know, he never once cheated on me, and you know, he's like, oh, I wouldn't go out with her, you know, and I'm like, why not? And he's like, oh, because, you know, she's taller than me, and I will not date someone who is taller than me, and she's only got one eye. He goes, oh, how embarrassing. I'm not going to date someone like that. So embarrassing. And that because he had his perception was someone who had to be like me, you know, someone his height, had nice hair and a flawless face, a nice figure, he wasn't fat, blah, 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 you know, what typical men do, you know. And so anyway, after he started doing this speed, I have no idea, I never saw him using it, but I knew he was, so I don't know if he was drinking it, snorting it, injecting it, or what, but I know he was using it, and quite often, because he never got the hot rod. And he bought this car, this old car from the wreckers, and he goes, I'm going to use the money, and I'm going to do this episode of it. And then all of a sudden, that became the next pattern. Instead of working on that one, he would get another car, another one, and there by the end there was about half a dozen just old wrecked cars. I mean, the backyard looked like a car yard, looked like a wreckers. I mean, and not one little, he did not do one little bit of work on any of those cars. He was just talking through drugs. And that's when he started cheating on me because of the speed that made him do that. And all of a sudden, he's just going around impregnating, or trying to impregnate, every girl in town, including the ones that he used to say, she's ugly. Or I would be embarrassed to date her because she's tall with one eye, with a big nose. And so that was when I said that I'm leaving, I'm moving out. And I did. And I ended up moving around to a 200-year-old cottage opposite my parents' place, which is my parents' friend's home. And they gave me the lease on that. And I was living there on my own with my cat, Ebony. And I was so happy during those times there. That was the happiest time of my life being alone. But they used to come around. But my boyfriend would come around occasionally, beg me to come back, and he'd had another girlfriend at that point in time, and he wanted the best of both worlds, meaning had me and her and whoever else. I wasn't going to be in it, and he would come around and ask me for money, and I'm like, well, I'm not giving you any money, I'm not paying for your drugs or whatever. And then he started following me around town. He would just stalking me everywhere I went. He would always drive past. And so not long after that, my friend said to me, oh look, Herb told me that her boyfriend's brother had separated from his girlfriend and was looking for a new partner. And so we met up. That's how we met. That's how I met my husband, and ex-husband now. And so that's why I ended up moving to Melbourne with him, just to stop my ex-boyfriend from stalking us. Like, he would come around to my cottage and say to me, oh, there's someone in there. And I'm like, say, go live your life. Leave me alone. I got sick and tired of telling you. It was ridiculous. So then I moved down to Melbourne, and my ex-husband, he was just, for the few months that we're dating, he was okay. And when I spoke to his ex-girlfriend, when he had a visitation nights to visit his boy, she said, how she left him because he was violent, abusive, and won't stop. And this is what I mean, because I made the mistake of thinking, oh, she's just saying that because she's a jealous ex-lover type of thing, but I was wrong. That wasn't how she was thinking. She was actually really warning me. And I ignored that warning because of what I thought about her. So when we got married, the actual day on our wedding day in the afternoon, during the reception, that was the day he actually changed. And I saw his true colours for the first time, and that was the day the violence started too. So anyway, cut long story short, we'll move forward. And so how I got this is how I got the other injury. So floor in the lounge room, just wiping down the coffee table. And all of a sudden, my ex-husband he was watching TV and he stood up without saying anything. And all of a sudden, I'm a bit close to him, and all of a sudden, he just throws the wall unit on top of me. And he's just standing over me, just yelling for the next half an hour or so, die bitch, you know, just repeating himself, yelling that over and over. Before he walks out of the room, I don't know where he went, but I assume he went into the bedroom to watch TV in there. And he left me for dead with just a volume on top of me, it was getting heavier and heavier. And because it was getting heavier, my breath was getting shallower and shallower. So he finally comes back into the lounge room, and it was over there a bit over half an hour, because how I know that is because I was watching the clock on the wall. And when he came back into the lounge room, I thought he was going to take the wall unit off me, but he didn't. I just spent another half an hour repeating the same sentence, leaning over me, yelling, die, bitch, die, you know, before he finally did move the wall unit back against the wall. And even though I could finally breathe, I still couldn't move because my back was just excruciating. And I'm very lucky that he didn't put me into a wheelchair. And I still have a bad back today. Oh my God. And then, another time, I also have a permanent injury with my wrist, which I also mentioned in a previous video. And he tells everyone, oh, that was a sex injury. But it wasn't. Because he wanted to have sex, but I didn't, because why would I let someone, I don't care if they're my husband or not, why would I want to have sex with someone who takes everything of mine from me, including my car, which was also my 21st birthday present, which was my dream car, which was a 5-speed gold-coloured Gemini sedan. And he went and sold that for $500. And he spent the whole $500 on dope. And he didn't even ask me if he could sell that car. And I had no idea he was going to until he did. And I couldn't believe it. And he's making it dope, watching TV in the lounge room. And he's like, all of a sudden he just starts laughing like hysterical. And he's like, oh, hey, bitch, look, I'm smoking your car. But he didn't have to say that because that's what he was really doing. And I tell you what, those words hurt more. Those words hurt more than when he actually did them, like, you know. And I had to take Daniel, because Daniel was only a baby at that time, and I had to take him to the bedroom because we couldn't breathe because of the smoke. Going bad. I went into the bedroom and I just cried with Daniel on my lap, with just a baby at the time. And I mean, the day that I left my husband, I had nothing except the clothes in my bag. And he probably would have taken them too if he had half a chance. So, I mean, here I am not wanting to have sex with someone who just abuses me, takes everything that I own, you know, and spends all the money that he, you know, sells all my stuff for drugs, and then calm down, and then, you know, so he wants to have sex, and I'm like saying no, and I put my hand up and say, and I'm like, no, I'm not in the mood, I don't want to. So he pushed me off the bed, And once as I landed on the floor, I put my hand out to like this too, so I could catch myself, but I ended up hurting my wrist instead. And it just felt like, for such a long time after that, the fingers, my fingers here and all the way down here, it just felt like strings, you know. The best way I could describe that feeling is by how, I remember the film with Our Nightmare on Elm Street, where Freddy's got in the dreams with the bangs, you know, on his victims, and that's what it felt like. And to this very day, when I do things with my wrist, like whether it's cleaning or cooking or whatever, excuse me, by the end of the day, my wrist is swollen, and I have to put some arthritis cream on there to help take the pain away, and wear a tight bandage to make it feel more comfortable. So there are two of the permanent injuries that I got from both my ex-boyfriend as well as my ex-husband. And now I also have PTSD, which is called post-traumatic stress disorder, because every time I go to sleep at night time, even all those years later after I've been divorced, I still have nightmares of what happened every night, which is so annoying and so draining, because every time I talk about what happened, think about what happened, writing my book about what happened, my heart rate goes automatically up to 190, even when I'm dreaming at night. So I wake up feeling exhausted. And now when I wake up, I've got to spend at least half an hour or so, you know, doing relaxing and breathing exercises so I can start my day, whereas I never had to do that before I was married, you know. I mean, I know I'm not the only one who has to put up with permanent injuries. There are so many other people going to turn down here who have permanent injuries too. And not only that, so many girls don't even survive domestic violence. Look how many are in the cemeteries, and I was nearly one of them. Well, I'm so grateful to be alive. Really am. And I feel like crying. Oh my God. And not only that, I also have brain damage as well, because just before I left my ex-husband, which I had to, because if I didn't, I wouldn't be here now. And he pushed my head into the concrete balcony wall. So hard, I just went down in a pile of pain. And Daniel saw the whole thing, and I'll never forget the look on Daniel's face. And Daniel went back in and said to me, "Oh man, Daddy, don't you hurt my mum." And my ex-husband, he threatened my son with a 16-inch katana, saying, holding the katana up in his face, threatening him, "If you call the cops, I'm going to kill you." And that was the day that he moved out. And I can't blame him, because he had had enough of all that hilarious nonsense. I think I'll just pack over here for now. We're on Flemington now, so that's good. I just finished up with what I want to say. Oh, I go to what I've got to do. So, and I did not realize we need to block that sun. So, up there. That's better. No, it is for now. So, yeah, so because of that injury, I couldn't walk properly for quite a while after that. And so I left him. I went back home to my parents' place to live, and I found myself, I was unable to talk. And I had to learn how to talk again, which for me was both embarrassing and humiliating. So that's how I got that injury, another permanent injury that I have to live with for the rest of my life. But I'm hoping to turn this negative situation around with my book, which is nearly done, and so I can teach girls how to navigate a dangerous relationship safely in case they were to find themselves in that situation. You know, because, I mean, when we go for, if you want to go for your, for example, if you want to go for your license, you have to study first and practice first before you give your license. It's the same thing with relationships, you know. If you don't know beforehand that not all relationships are going to be positive and happy, I mean, 1/3 of every family has a domestic violence experience, which shows how common it really is. And, you know, if you don't know beforehand, I mean, if you don't know, you don't know. And if you were to find yourself with a violent partner, and you don't know what to do and how to do things, and how to go about it, what not to do and everything, it's going to be so hard and so difficult for you. Even when knowing what to do is still going to be difficult for you. But at least with knowing what to do and what not to do and how to do things, at least you know that you can save your own life, because sometimes you have to be your own first responder. Because not an ambulance driver can't, or the police can't always save you. And so this is the moral of the story. So what do you do? How do you prevent that? Well, it's simple, by education and knowing that it could happen to anyone. Domestic violence doesn't discriminate, because it can happen to, it doesn't matter if you're rich, poor, what status you are, whatever, you know, it's all irrelevant. And so my advice to you is, if you meet a new boyfriend and if his ex-girlfriend says to you, like what I got told, you know, I left him because of something bad happening, or he abused me, whatever, you know not to push a relationship with him, because you know the same thing will happen to you. And after being a while together in a relationship, and if he hits you just once, I don't care if he apologises afterwards and says, I didn't mean it won't happen again, which is just a lie because it will happen again. Just the first, I'm telling you now, with the first warning sign, the first red flag, that's it, game over. Leave him immediately. He's not worth it. Because the first warning sign and the first red flag is the start of a domestic violence relationship. And that's what you don't want. Now, this video is starting to get a bit long, so I'm going to cut it short here. But when I finish my book, you will understand what I'm talking about. And yeah, so I have to leave it here because it's going to be a long video and I've got things to do and I'm implementing now, like I said. So before I do go, I just want to thank you for joining me today. I hope you could learn something from what I said today. And remember, it's not all men that are domestic violence perpetrators, but it's mostly men. There are some women who are too. But it doesn't matter whether male or female, abusers are abusers, aren't they? I just want you all to take care and be safe and learn from my experiences and other people's too, because it's very important, because we have relationships because we want to share our life with someone who will love us and keep us safe. But if you end up with a violent partner, you know, what's the point in being with someone who's like that? Because that's just being lied to, isn't it? You know, he says, oh, he won't do that again, blah, blah, blah. But it always happens again and again. So if you're in a domestic violence relationship, don't listen to what he says, watch what he does. Because if he says, oh, I didn't mean it, it won't happen again, you know it always will. You always watch. Because if you watch what he does, that will be the truth. Which I had to learn the hard way to learn all this, but that's okay, because I can teach you girls now. So I'm going to cut this video off like I just said. So please take care, stay safe, and God bless. Thank you for joining me today.